I'm back. It's been a hot minute, I know. Trust me, it's really hot. I'm going to try to get through this before I absolutely melt. But I want to do a bit of a read from Blood Hunt Sky People, which is book 6. Now, a little bit about the book. A great deal of research went into this book. Why is my camera falling? Mostly because I have been fascinated by the Osage Nation and admired their culture ever since I was a young teen, growing up in Missouri. I found, and still do find, their myths and way of life absolutely fascinating. And I came across a legend about the Sky People with the Osage. And I dug deeper to find the creation story. And from there came the aha moment. I have an idea, and off I went. I even dedicated book 6 to the Osage Nation. And I hope if any of you are reading this book, please don't be upset with me with the twists that I did. It was logical for me to take it in the direction that I did. And when coupled with some other stories and myths, came about the premise of this story. It's set in the year 2109. And it's just supposed, and it's a little bit of a prologue before I get into Kai's part of the story. I also want to note, actually thank, 2 military officers. I don't know if they're still alive or not. General Akers and 2nd Lieutenant James Ortiz. Like I said, they may very well have been passed on by now, but I think they'd be pleased that I still remember my military training and that I've used it in this book, along with some other books that I've written and co-written. And if you're still alive, I'm not so skinny now, are I? Okay. Prologue. It's a time frame in the far distant past of humankind's memory, during the times of the Great Floods and the Osage Nation, which came into being. Now, legends speak of how the Osage Nation came into being, and it was not at all like the creation legends of other nations, or even of other religions. They tell of the time when their villages were placed during the Great Floods, but since the Osage were surrounded by several rivers while they lived high up on the bluffs, it is not known just when this great flood could have been. They were divided into 4 clans. The Zoshu, whom the heroine of our saga refers to as Zishu, which are the Sky People. The Hunga, also known in 2109 as the Hunka, which are the Earth People. The Thorny Locust People, and the Little Osage People. There was supposed to be a 5th clan, but no one knows what became of that proposal. At one time, there were only the Zosho, Thorny Locust, and Little Osage, as the Hunga had disappeared to the north. The chief of the Sky People took some of his hunters and went in search of them, finally discovering the lost band living in deplorable conditions. Reminding them of their sacred duty, he took them back to the Osage lands. Legends also speak of the time when the Osage came to Mother Earth and landed in the trees. They were the first to arrive, the Sky People. And they appealed to the Great One to lower the waters so they could have dry homes. Hence the tall bluffs where they resided in peace with the other clans. They revered their ancestors of long ago and looked to the heavens when they saw the mighty beings and their ancestors. Well now, legends always seem to have a grain of truth in them. And now we speak of what really happened when the Osage came to planet Earth. In the long ago, 200 million years according to certain artifacts, astronavigators wandered the heavens in search of a hospitable planet to populate. The homeworld was becoming unbalanced due to population explosions and the strain on the natural resources. They took with them representations of all the cultures from their old world to introduce them to a hopefully new home. It did not worry them that it might take a very long time to find a suitable habitation, After all, by other life form standards, they were practically immortal due to the nanites naturally coursing through their systems. If one became ill or injured, their personal nanites would repair the problem. No one thought it unusual, as they were a naturally occurring life form from their home world, which was compatible with their humanoid bodies. A symbiotic relationship, as it were. After traveling through billions of galaxies, rejecting each potential planet found as not being 100% healthy for them, the astronavigators finally spotted a seemingly innocent blue planet whirling around a huge sun. Oh, other planets in that solar system might have worked. The one known much later in the history of mankind as Mars even had water systems, and they settled there for a short time before realizing the poor little planet was in its dying stages. Fortunately, they had drilled deep into its core for their sprawling technology and cities, which gave them plenty of time to examine the other planets in the small system. Finally, the explorers decided that Earth would suit their purposes, and everyone moved from Mars, leaving the subterranean cities and technologies in place. It could be that at some point they might have to make a retreat, and even if Mars were dead on the surface, their old homes would still be safe underground. Just in case this was a possibility, they left one of the massive Earthkeeper crystals to stand guard over their subterranean world. She knew exactly what must be done if it were to be invaded. And as such, the Mars Earthkeeper, known as M5, sent out energy to create mutant life forms to help her guard their world. Upon arrival back on Earth, after having visited it only very briefly during their search for a home, the astronavigators were dismayed to see the little blue planet was covered in water, with just a few places peeking up from the surface. Something had to be done about this before settling in. Fortunately, among their many thousands of settlers were those who were well versed in terraforming. So they called upon those scientists to provide a suitable landscape for them to reside upon. Pangaea was uncovered, dried out, studied, and subsequently divided into more manageable continents. Some of the settlers chose Egypt, South America, or a myriad of other continents, and introduced certain cultures brought from back home. Each group of settlers took with them a massive crystal known as an Earthkeeper. They were sentient and could help make decisions on what was best for the planet they were now on. Plus, the sentient crystals kept records of everything which had happened from the moment they left their dying world to this one, and far into the future. 2 had been taken to areas which became known as Egypt and Atlantis. But one became separated and wound up in a part of the United States still transforming the steamy jungles to merely marshland, which was later known as Washington, D.C. One group decided to populate the delightful forested area of what would eventually become known as Missouri in the United States, and those astronavigators set about establishing the culture best suited for this little corner of the world. 4 clans were formed, with an intense discussion about forming a 5th one, to resemble a clan back on their former world. But an agreement couldn't be reached, especially when the Hanga clan suddenly disappeared. The elected chief of the Zosho, or Sky People clan, took some of the more able-bodied warriors and set off to find them. It was not an easy task, for the wilderness had taken on characteristics they had not terraformed, and they realized the wee planet had sentience to it, which delighted the known spiritual leaders of the settlers. After a laborious and dangerous 2-year search, they found the Hanga, chastised their alleged leader, and took them back home to the clan villages for re-education in what they had hoped to achieve in this new world. Still, no agreement could be reached on the 5th clan, and they tabled the discussion for future meetings. Noting that the land might not be hospitable for some of the artifacts the Zosho were keeping, they began looking for a suitable place to hide them until the world was ready to accept the fact that the cultures now spread around the globe had all come from a distant galaxy. As they were the sky people, it was their duty to preserve the history of their race, which was a major responsibility. Finally, one day, a massive cave was discovered on the Zosho land. In fact, it was so massive, they realized that a guardian would be needed to protect the secret. The more they explored, and the further they went down into the caverns, the more they saw the potential for preserving the artifacts and the sleepers for as long as it took for mankind to become enlightened. Several years went by as they prepared the deepest areas of the caverns for the artifacts and an antechamber for the sleeping pods. The clan had grown over the years to the point where the original astronavigators could place themselves in suspended animation until the arrival of the enlightened ones. An outer cave was developed for the guardian to stand faithful, with orders that their descendants would also stand guard. No knowledge of what they were guarding would be given, other than that the cave was sacred and they were not allowed to enter until the sign appeared. They didn't say what the sign was. The massive Earthkeeper was placed in the antechamber, and a very advanced instrument was also set in place to be triggered when the inner cave opening was sealed over. It would produce an incredibly strong alien radiation field to protect against intruders if they entered without the proper protective clothing. Before the doors to the sleeping pods were closed, the Zosho appointed war chief asked a very important question. When will you awaken again? We will awaken when the earth shakes and the female warrior with the glowing hands appears. She will be our descendant and will be the one to form the fifth clan. Remember the prophecies foretold of old about the glowing hands. She will appear on more than one occasion when the need is great. Our seer has said there will come a time when our people face a mortal enemy and a great war will erupt. She will be spoken of then as well. Remember, wait for her. With those final words, the sleeping pod doors drew shut and the lights dimmed. Somberly making their way to the surface, knowing full well they would have to live without the advanced technology, the elders prudently activated the protective radiation instrument and sealed the inner cave opening shut with special markings above the obvious sealed wall. Those in the know would eventually see the markings and understand what they meant. Setting the guard in place to watch over the tomb, they gave instructions to the survivors to always have a person living in the outer cave as a sacred honor and trust. Time marched on. And with that, I'm going to leave it there. Blood Hunt, Sky People, Book 6. I think you will be very surprised. I really enjoyed writing this book.